Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, episode 30. Big one today.
Big
Jay,
3-0.
what's going on?
Not a lot, man. Just was hoping to come on today and talk about a really resounding Texas win, but this pandemic had other things in mind. So we were always planning to have Mike on this week to talk about everything, state of the program, recruiting, the whole bit. And we're even going to touch on some Running Horns basketball today. So, Mike, what's up, man?
Oh, man, just nice to take a break. As me and Kerry were talking about this before the show. Nice to not have to stress through a one-score game. So, yeah, good to take a breather, watch some other teams stress out. So, like the OU Oklahoma State game. So, that'll be us next week. So, doing good, though.
Yeah, we've had some bye-week luxury this season. Yeah. It's been can't complain about that, actually. I did find it funny. It was, I think, earlier in the week. Jay, I know we were texting about this. I think we all shared this. Was the official Texas Athletics Twitter account celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Dicker kick to beat Kansas last year. I think we got a good little laugh out of that. Like, oh, relive the moment. Relive the moment.
Yeah.
So if we would have dealt with that this Saturday, I think we'd be in a little bit of a different mood today. But
that Craig Way radio call that was basically with the same enthusiasm as Vince Young crossing the goal line on a 4th and 5. Like, I mean, it's good, Dicker the kicker. I mean, I get it. And that's who Craig is. And
that's the state of the program.
And that's something that we're going to touch on today, man. Is what's the deal with that, and where you think? I mean, we've discussed this stuff before, but Kerry, where do you want to start today in terms of going over the football stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we just mentioned it. The KU game it's rescheduled. It was supposed to be yesterday, and it's now been bumped out to December 12th, which is interesting because that was one of the tentative dates that the Big 12 had scheduled for the conference championship game. So now we know that that's not going to happen on the 12th. Looks like the 19th at the earliest will be Big 12 championship weekend. But this is we'll start with just the game getting rescheduled. I know the Horns were a little banged up going into this week to begin with. This is a chance to get a little bit of rest before Black Friday game against Iowa State. Yeah, I mean, it's this kind of a blessing in disguise kind of postponement, if you want to call it that, in terms of getting guys healthy and getting ready for what's setting up. And we'll get to the standings on this in a little bit. What's setting up to be pretty momentous, like, occasion for the Big 12 conference on Friday, like in terms of the Horns' chances to play for a conference title.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, in terms of the coach that Tom Herman is and what we've seen him do here on campus, having an extra week of preparation matters to this guy. I mean, he's 8-1 with at least an extra week of preparation while he's at Texas. And like that to me is, they couldn't set up better for him going into Iowa State. I know he wasn't planning for Iowa State this whole time, but whatever magic that he works when he has an extra week off, it seems to be his bread and butter. So Mike, I'm thinking that it couldn't have happened at a better time. If you're going to get a random bye week, this would have been the right time to do it at this point in the season.
Yeah, for me, I think this is obviously a perfect scenario and one that he has to take advantage of, which he hasn't taken advantage of some things this year at the beginning of the year and the middle of the season, slump that we went through. But when you look at it, now he has 2 weeks to prepare for Iowa State. They just played yesterday, so they're going to be on a shorter week. 6th we're playing on Friday. They're coming here. I think Vegas opened up at Texas -3 is kind of what I was seeing somewhere. So I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing. And this is an opportunity to right some wrongs on his end and try to finish this season 8-2 with a shot at the Big 12 title. I kind of hate that Kansas is now pushed back to that weird game. It just sets up for a weird collapse at the end of the season. So
right.
and whether it might
Yeah.
be an issue. They're just not very good though, so I don't think that's going to be a major issue. But at the same time, just in the back of your mind, I could see this winning Iowa State, winning Kansas State, and there's that game there, and it would just be a total collapse. And that's just the nerve, I think, of every Texas fan right now, is that you just expect something. You're given these gifts of these bye weeks and these different things, and they just keep falling into your lap. And you're like, can we just take advantage of one of these to get ourselves to the Big 12 title game? And for me, it's still he needs to win the Big 12 title. I mean, it's just not acceptable for this to not be a championship season based on what you've seen in the Big 12 and around the country. So,
right.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned that on the kind of negatives of this game being postponed. I found it's interesting that this team's going to have to finish with 2 road games back to back in December. Trip to Kansas, get the K-State game, and then following up with the trip to Lawrence the following week. And yeah, some teams I think can thrive in that kind of like situation where it's like road warrior mentality, but like, do we trust this team to have that kind of mentality yet? But let's talk about Iowa State. They had a pretty good night last night. I mean, so Texas's next 2 opponents faced off last night. Iowa State just absolutely crushed K-State. I mean, any takeaways from this? Is K-State just in that bad a shape right now, or was this more of a impressive performance from Iowa State's side?
I think it's a combination of the two. They're coached really. That is a very well coached team. One of the better coached teams in this conference, and to see them go out and convincingly do that in a game where not many people had them beating Kansas State by 45 or whatever it was. But the point is they went out and they handled their business. They show they know how to go out and handle their business, and that's what worries me the most about this upcoming matchup. Is the fact that Iowa State has shown us that they can go out and take care of business when they want to. If they need to go out and get a convincing victory, if they want to go out and just absolutely put it on someone, they have the capability to do that. And I feel like for them, they have all the confidence. You beat somebody that badly, you shut somebody out. Like that's talk about momentum. So it's basically, even though it's best case scenario for Iowa State too at this point, in my opinion, just coming into Austin and figuring out a way to have that road warrior mentality, like you were saying. It's just, Mike, I'm just, that's what worries me the most about this matchup is aside from not really trusting Tom Herman, but Iowa State is just playing good football right now.
Yeah, for me, I think if you look at the X's and O's, Brock Purdy is playing some pretty good football. So he presents a challenge. Now, if he goes full Brock Purdy and, reverts back to some of the issues that he's had with turnovers, then, I think that can help, obviously, Texas. I think Breece Hall is one of the best running backs in the nation. You saw what he did yesterday. You see what he's been doing all year, the end of last year. He's dynamic, too. I mean, he's out of the backfield, catching passes, making plays. So, Texas is going to have its hands full. The one thing that gives me a little bit of confidence, though, 2 things actually, is going to be that Iowa State they're not very dynamic in the passing game, at least for me, as far as your wideouts. And that's Texas' biggest struggle, is containing, some of these stronger wideouts. With we've kind of looked at the numbers, and the cornerbacks this year for Texas just haven't been playing well. And that's only been the real big weak link in the Texas defense over the last few weeks. Other than that, the Texas defense has really improved tremendously under Chris Ash, and I think they're settling in. He said this week that they had one of the best defensive practices that they've had all year. And this guy just seems like a no-nonsense, like he's not going to make excuses. He didn't make excuses when the defense wasn't playing well. And I think that, if we can create a few turnovers, Osai can maybe get a strip sack in there. That's going to be huge for Texas. And then, I don't know what to expect from Texas. Like we always talk about, I don't know what to expect. Like what's the passing offense going to look like? Sam's a little banged up, so he'll be a little more healthy. I love that we've unleashed Bijan Robinson over the last few weeks. I think this kid just needs touches. You just have to give this kid the ball. I don't care what your analytics and like things like that say. It's just give the kid the ball and let him make things happen. You see that Iowa State does that. They just ride Brees Hall when he's hot, and that's huge. So for me, it's just one of those things where it's like, what is the Texas offense going to do? Because I think I can know what to expect now from the Texas defense for the most part and where the weak links are. So
yeah, this game is really really hard for me to pin down. Like Mike, you mentioned the spread. It was Texas a 3-point favorite, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do any of you guys do you guys feel comfortable picking this game either way? Like,
No.
I don't have any pulse on like what to expect from this, just because, like you said, this team, we still don't really know which version is going to show up and what they're going to do. Like, I do trust the defense more at this point. I think, if we were to kind of throw a number on it, I think, I don't know, 24, 27 points or so is going to be the get you home number for Texas. I think if the offense can do that, I think they're in decent shape, because I think this defense is going to do well enough to hold Iowa State to under 24, 27 points. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, Kerry, we were talking yesterday, and we were talking about how Texas would still continue to be favored in every matchup on the way out for the rest of the regular season, and I thought this line would have been closer to 6 or 7 for Texas, was my opinion. But you said you thought it was going to be 4, and you were pretty close to it. And this was obviously before the beatdown that they put on Kansas State last night that we were having this conversation. But yeah, I mean, 3 points to me, that's at home. That's a toss up. That's a coin flip to me.
Yeah, especially
like
this year.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. So I mean, I feel like Iowa State's going to look at that line and be like, so we just kicked the shit out of somebody by 45 points, and we're a 3-point underdog.
Yeah.
Like,
and they're a higher ranked team in the polls as well. So I think, yeah, that's a good point. They might be coming in with a little bit of a
and that's
something to prove.
When Tom Herman is that coach, that's when he's at his best. And now he's having to coach from the standpoint of, we're just a better team. We're nobody thinks, people think we're going to win this game. And it's, I don't know, Mike, when we're talking about this stuff, to me, this is really a coin flip game.
Yeah, it really is. I was kind of surprised just with the things that you guys are mentioning. I actually thought this would come in at a -1 Texas, or even a coin flip, and even so it's interesting to see that that's kind of where it's opened up. Obviously, this thing's going to move. I think it'll get closer to even as kind of the sharper money comes in. Just knowing that this is basically a playoff game, like Sam said. The Big 12 right now is basically in playoff mode right now for the Big 12 title game. So I think that's going to be super interesting. I'll pull up the standings here. So if you look at it here, you got Iowa State at the top of the leaderboard here. It's 6-1 in the conference. After that game last night, Oklahoma State both have 2 losses. Texas is sitting there with 2 losses. And you've seen kind of West Virginia fade away, as well as Kansas State with the injury to the quarterback. To me, they're just not the same team without that quarterback. So that really, kind of hurt their chances when he went down. But for me, it's basically a coin flip. And it'll just be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised either way. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas got blown out. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas put it on them. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a field goal game. Like, there's just so many range of outcomes because you don't know how the Texas offense is going to perform. And I think that's the major key story of the game for me.
Well, that's an interesting point to kind of segue and talk about recruiting. the big bad word of Tom Herman's, regime. Some good, but we've seen over these last couple months a heavy dose of some bad recruiting as well. When we talk about we don't know what to expect from this offense, is the recruits feel the same way, right? I think that's kind of what we're seeing play out with this class of 21, class of 22 guys kind of saying well, we don't really know what we're going to do if we go to Texas.
Yeah, I don't think It's just been a roller coaster this year for both the 21 and the 22 class. Obviously, we had the Quinn Ewers complete the flip. The highly touted prospect, quarterback, number one quarterback, the number one player in the nation. Finally, it was expected, but come out and say that he's going to Ohio State, and who can blame him? You look at Ohio State, and it's just a well-oiled machine on offense. I mean, who doesn't want to play in that system? It seems like a fun system and something that can take you to the next level. And I just think with the roller coaster year that Texas has had, it's just been one of those deals where the interest just doesn't seem to really be there on some of these highly nationally rated recruits. And to start being consistently great and playing for Big 12 titles, you got to get these guys. Like, you're not going to hit on every single one, but the more you get, we've talked about this, the higher chance of success rate, because you're talking about NFL players. Those are the guys that take you to the next level. Like, you look at Ohio State, it's just full of NFL guys for me. So
yeah, I mean, and when we're having this discussion about the players' mindsets and stuff, that Tom Herman had to change the coaching staff in order to keep his job. Like, that was the deal, right? Let's clean house and let's get a new staff in here. That's how I'm going to save this thing. So with the turnover there, then it takes time for a Chris Ash, no matter how good of a coach he is, to find his rhythm with the set of players that he's never coached before and get them into a scheme. And with the COVID stuff, like not being able to fully have a normal sort of working into a season and installing stuff and getting on-field reps. And now you're seeing the fact that, like Mike, like you were saying, he's just figuring it out now. They're figuring out the ways to handle their business, put the guys into the best positions to be successful. We've talked about, and Mike, you'll remember, we've not been very high on Ojimo in the first half of this season, but he's one of those guys where they're starting to put him into positions to be successful. You're seeing this defense evolve. We're seeing defensive recruits still have interest in this program. It's the offensive side of the ball that we're seeing, people run for the hills, whether it's basically pick an SEC school, or right. Like you said, or Ohio State, like a Quinn Ewers. So it's just to the point where the players pay more attention to that now more than ever.
Right.
And the fact that the offense hasn't started to click yet this season, in my opinion, is the reason that these commits who were betting on a turnaround, they're just seeing that it's not there yet, and they're making their decisions.
I think, it comes back to what I'm talking about in the Iowa State preview. You just don't know what you're going to get from the Texas offense. And I think that recruits don't know what they're going to get. And you look at the defensive class, we just added on the screen here, Terrence Cooks and Byron Murphy. They're ready to tie 3 stars on Rivals. Cooks is the linebacker out of Pearland, and then Byron Murphy out of DeSoto is actually Shamar Turner, who we've talked. They're both actually composite 4 stars. Rivals is a little bit lower on these guys, but they're kind of consensus top 50 to 60 players in the state with a little bit of upside there. But you're seeing these guys commit because they're seeing what's happening on the field. You did lose Billy Bowman, obviously, to OU, so that was a big loss. But you don't know if he was playing offense or defense at the end of the day. So I think defensively, the recruiting's been pretty good. I mean, you got a pretty salty defensive class where you can keep the guys you have and add a few more pieces. But then you look at the bottom of the screen, and it's like, what are we doing offensively in recruiting? Remington Strickland's a new name that's popped up because you haven't recruited well on the offensive line. And then you've got Keith Ron Lee, who just got offered. He's not even really a nationally rated recruit right now.
It's a great name, though. Keith Ron.
Yeah, he's a great name. He's super fast. You pop on the film. He's one of those guys that maybe goes to Iowa State and just tears you up. But it's just like you're not getting the nationally rated recruits on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and I think it's going to be. God, this is such a weird season because here we are talking about a team that really has its destiny in its hands to go win a conference championship. But we're talking about the coach maybe being let go and replaced. We're talking about recruits not wanting to jump on the wagon. Like, this is such a weird season for a lot of reasons. But like, how does we got about 5 minutes here before our break coming up, so we'll kind of bundle this in with recruiting talk. How does Tom Herman kind of salvage this? What gets offensive recruits? I know yours might be a lost cause, but going forward, let's say Tom Herman is the coach moving forward. What does he do to salvage this kind of reputation or perception of the offense that's happening? Because like you said, the defense seems to be they're pulling in some decent talent, and they seem to be getting coached well. What does he do about the offense?
Hey, what do you think?
Establish an identity over the remainder of this season. And Mike, you touched on it earlier, and we've been calling for this since day one. It's get Bijan Robinson more touches. Like, that is the key to me to establishing Tom Herman. It always, it feels like he wants to be a power run guy. I don't understand. Give Bijan Robinson the ball. He needs 20 to 25 touches every game. The results will be there. I promise you, Tom, you will like what you see if Bijan Robinson touches the ball that many times in a game.
He's just
and then you go
dude.
from there. He is, man. And that's all. That's my entire take on this. Is you can still try to establish an identity over the remainder of this season, because if you go 3-0 over the next 3 games, you win a Big 12 title, and you do it by being a Bijan Robinson team, led offense, and your defense keeps playing well, and then Sam just does enough. We don't know what we're going to get out of Sam, and I think that's one of the biggest question marks here is just his play in general. But Mike, I mean, it's in their hands to do this.
Yeah, and it's just stop. We've talked about this before. Stop with the receiver rotations. Get your 3 best guys out there. This needs to be the Jake Smith, Josh Moore, Brennan Eagles show with a sprinkle of some of the backups in. You saw that against Oklahoma State, and I don't know what happened against the previous game. Was it Baylor?
West Virginia.
West Virginia, yeah. I just don't know why the rotations came back in. I mean, it's kind of weird to say, but I think the best thing that happened was Ingram kind of getting hurt forced Tom Herman's hand to give Bijan Robinson. And then when you gave him the ball, he exploded for a few runs in the first half, and you didn't really give him the ball much more. And then your offense stalled until the fourth quarter. That was the Baylor game, his first start. So I just, I don't know. It's just kind of mind-boggling. I mean, Kerry, what's your take on just?
I don't think it's going to change. I mean, here we are, 3 games out from the end of the season, and we're still talking about rotations. We're still talking about who needs to, it's glaringly obvious who needs to be getting touches. It's not going to change. This isn't going to change over the next 3 weeks or the next 3 games. And, potentially a Big 12 championship, and, knowing Tom Herman, watch whatever bowl game this team plays in, they're going to come out. There won't be any rotations. Bijan's going to get 25 touches, and we're going to be like, oh, well, here it is now.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But I just don't think it's going to change in the last few weeks.
To the title game? What's your gut tell you?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Mike, man, here we go.
Are you on board? Let's do it.
I'm on board, man, but it's just it's not a fun ride.
No, I think this team gets to Arlington and faces OU in a rematch.
Let's do it.
And
let's do another 6 hours in Dallas. That's great.
Yeah, well, and that's what I would be dreading. I would not be looking forward to that little early Christmas gift on potentially December 19th.
No.
And so, well, guys, we're gonna have to take a break here in just a sec. But
right.
When we come back, it's time to start talking some Longhorn basketball. It is the season. It's that time of year. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show. That nice, quick little break. Let's get into some basketball. The parallels between Tom Herman's program and Shaka Smart's program are eerie. uh, here we are. Our football show, we talked about this team has potential. They have all this talent. If the coaching can get out of the way, this is a team that can go and win some things and kind of bring Texas back into the national conversation. We're having the exact same conversation about the basketball program today, right? Like that's kind of, at least in my perception, the similarities are striking.
Yeah, I completely agree. Here we are staring at a season where everything seems to be set up for one of the more successful seasons. And here we are thinking that if it can't get done, that the coach might not be here at the end of the year. So, yeah, it's all or nothing again. And it's just going to be really interesting to see how this is going to play out. And he's coaching for his job. Shaka Smart is. I mean, there's no other way to put this. This is, do or die time for him as far as his tenure at Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting the way that, as opposed to football having a bowl win against Utah and kind of this momentum going into the offseason, just by nature of the, everything that happened with the pandemic and the tournament being canceled, like we never had this kind of wrapping up and finishing of last season for Shaka Smart's team. Like this is a team that started to seem to put it together a little bit. They started to well, if they win this game and they win so many games in the Big 12 tournament, this is a team that can get into get into March Madness and maybe make a little bit of noise the first weekend. We never got that. We never got to see that kind of play out. I guess in a good way, does this kind of unlike like an Alamo Bowl win over Utah or a Sugar Bowl win over Georgia, like not having that with this basketball team, this kind of like final moment where you either go into the offseason pissed off or you go into the offseason with a ton of like momentum. Has this maybe, I'm trying to think of like how to describe it, like kind of alter our expectations of this program coming into this season without having that kind of like closure from the spring?
No, because for me, it's Shaka hasn't shown me that he can do anything on this campus that's, sustainable or even acceptable at a level that we would expect. Now, we're not pretending, like Texas
He's won a
basketball is
national
this elite
championship,
program.
Jay. He's won a national championship.
Oh man,
The National Invitation Tournament. That's a
that
national
NIT,
championship.
it's something. They did put a banner up for that, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did. I just think it comes down to just being really simple here. Like, it's like we said, the parallels are crazy. Like you have literally been waiting for this moment to have this a semblance of talent. And it's not that far stretched to say that this is the most talented college basketball team and one of the most talented teams in the country, top to bottom. You don't have this type of roster where no one transfers. You get a top 10 player coming in Greg Brown, who we'll talk about, and everything's there. They've all played together. You've got guys that have 70 plus starts, like multiple guys that have played over 30 games. And they're all, I think, of the 13 main guys that are going to see the court this year, 12 of those were top 100 recruits of their class in their classification. 11 of them were. So it's like you don't see this in college basketball very often. So it's really interesting to see. You're going to see guys coming off the bench that were starting last year. And there's not a lot of college basketball teams that have that luxury. So if you look at it here, I mean, Shaka Smart, 90 and 78 overall, 40 and 50 in Big 12 play. He just hasn't gotten it done. Now, granted, little leeway in the Big 12 because the Big 12 is now the dominant conference in college basketball. It has been for the last 2 to 3 years, but still, you're not even 500 in the conference. That's just unacceptable. You have 2 NCAA appearances, which you've collapsed in both games. And, you did have the nice little run to NIT where, the kind of the Band of Brothers deal where, these guys came out and, they fought hard and took that down. So, the strengths for me on the team, though, you're going to have a ton of experience. You're going to have a lot of talent. You're deeper than anybody else in the country. You're already coming back as one of the. So with all that, you were already one of the best defensive teams, one of the better rebounding teams in the country, and now you're adding Greg Brown, the super freshman that gives you that star power. But it's like Jay, you touched on, Kerry, you touched on. The biggest weakness to me is going to be Shaka Smart. Does he know how to manage this environment? Does he know how to get the guys minutes that need to get minutes at certain times in the game? Can you get enough outside shooting? Can you stop the turnovers? Which turnovers I think just is coaching. Like a lot of this stuff is coaching. Past results, I mean, have indicated that this is not going to be what we think it's going to be, but the opportunity is there. So, for me, that's kind of where it is with Shaka right now. It's can he handle what he has and put together? He's put this together, so can he make something of it?
And he's coached talented rosters before with the USA U18, was it?
Yep.
The team that he coached, and that to me he's shown that he can coach rosters full of talent. And I just hope I'm hoping that he can find a way to translate that to this mindset this year, where he knows how loaded the roster is. He knows these guys are all very talented, and they're all going to want to be on the floor. They're all going to want to touch the ball because they're competitors and they have talent. I mean, but to have that sort of depth is such a luxury. And how will he manage this, Mike, is throughout the season? It's a really key thing for us to watch as we're moving forward here. We're seeing here a preseason poll, and Texas is picked fourth in this preseason poll to finish fourth in the Big 12, which this is a very tough conference, and fourth place in this conference would be very, that would get the job done in terms of getting to the tournament, and to finish that high in this conference, he's going to have to win some games. So, guys, how are we feeling in terms of when we look at this roster, when we look at the history that Shaka has on campus? Is it fair to really expect, a top 15 team going into the playoffs? I mean, the tournament this year, based off of all that, or are we setting ourselves up for disappointment here? Because this roster it's exciting to look at.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, is it fair to expect it? Yeah, I think it's totally fair to expect it. I think with the recruiting and the roster that he's put together, I think it's completely reasonable to expect this team to be one of the top performing ones in the Big 12. Now, I know the Big 12 is just absolutely loaded. I know we had that, preseason poll up a second ago, and I think I saw, what was it, Mike, a week or two ago, was it the kind of preseason projection rankings, and they had Texas as number 9 in the country, like the 9th best team in the country.
Yeah.
But there were still 4 Big 12 teams, I think, ahead of them in that ranking.
Yeah.
It's a brutal league, but I think it's completely reasonable to expect this team to be what we hope it could be.
Yeah, and I think the advantages of playing in this brutal league should lead you to tournament success. Like you will be so battle tested in this conference. Like you look at Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are middle to starting to head towards the bottom of the Big 12 as far as like preseason, and they have some really talented teams too. Like it's just crazy the amount of talent that came back in the Big 12. And so I think Texas, the biggest luxury they have is that if some of these teams sustain injuries, it could really change the dynamic of their season. If Texas has injuries, it's not going to be, the end of the season for them. You've got guys that you can plug in and play. You look at the starting, projected starting 5 here. Matt Coleman's, picked to be on the preseason Big 12 team. Over 100 career starts. Really kind of been the engine for the last few years as far as getting people involved. Courtney Ramey's kind of settled into his own, kind of that off-ball position. But I think the biggest thing this year, the 2 guys we're about to talk about right now, which is Andrew Jones coming back, finally after beating cancer, and what a great story that was. Obviously one of the players that I root for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Longhorn history. He was dropping 20 points a game at the end of the season last year when they went on that big run, and he brings that outside shooting, and he was testing NBA waters before all this even happened to him. So, you pair that with Greg Brown, and this kid is just a phenom. You've all seen the highlights of this kid. I mean, he doesn't look like a high school athlete. Like he looks like he is NBA ready, and he's going to be a one and done. And I think that's just, the one thing that Shaka can kind of lean on is that you've got these guys that are super, super talented, and can you just not screw it up? And you got Jericho Sims, who, was projected as a second round pick last year for the back injury happened, late second, but would probably make a roster, NBA D League. He's coming back for his senior season. And I mean, he's bulked up and he just looks like he's going to control the paint. So you just have all these pieces in the start, and this is just the starting lineup, and they've all played together outside of Greg Brown. So what do you guys think about kind of like the trajectory of like the starting lineup and what what they can accomplish, not only defensively, because we should be one of the best defensive teams in the country, but offensively? I think you got some star power here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's some consistency there, we're going to really see the result that we want. I think, in my opinion, I mean, Brown is obviously going to play a big role, but for me, this team is going to go as far as Coleman takes them. He's the guy for me that the both ends of the floor. I mean, he's that important to me, and I feel like that an injury to either one of those players would be harmful to this, despite the depth. But Mike, the point that you made about being able to recover from that and having this is a strong starting lineup, and then you look at the guys coming off the bench, and this is you don't worry as much about it. You just hope that Shaka can stay out of the way, like you said, and let these guys play, because some of these guys coming off the bench are going to be contributors on a night in and night out basis, Kerry.
Yeah, and that's what you pull. We look at this on the bench. I mean, we talk about someone like Will Baker, like who's another highly recruited, like, a touted player coming in. Like there is depth here. It's what I like most about this lineup, and not just the starting lineup, but the bench. There's not a lot of holes in it. Like earlier on in like Shaka's tenure at Texas, there was kind of like, well, he doesn't have a proper point guard.
Right.
And then Coleman comes in, and then it's like, oh, well, he might not have someone that can get down low in the paint and clean up. Like, and there are no excuses with this lineup. Like, obviously injuries aside and those kinds of things, if this lineup stays healthy, they can play any kind of style.
You really can.
To adjust to their opponent, to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm most excited about with this. And on the flip side of it, if it goes sideways, Shaka doesn't have any excuse.
Yeah, if you can't win with this roster, like, then I don't see you being successful in college basketball going forward. I don't know. Like, I didn't say you won't get another job, but it's like, dude, like this is. You look at Kai Jones here, man. This is probably the most talented player on the roster outside of Greg Brown, and he's going to be coming off the bench. He was starting last year, really flashed. Gerald Liddell at the beginning of his last year was starting too, and he dropped a couple of nice games to start the year before his injury. Jace Febres has 30-plus starts in his career, brings that outside shooting. Donovan Williams was a super highly rated recruit, and, he's going to be that, the off-the-bench guard. And like you said, Will Baker, man, like this guy's highly touted, like he's a 5-star recruit. Like these guys are coming off the bench. Like it's like you have all the ingredients. Like, can you just bake the cake, essentially, to use a Charlie Strong reference?
Hey, is the cake already baked or what? I mean, is it baked or not? I mean, do we need to bake it or is it baked?
I mean, you bought the most expensive ingredients, and all you got to do is put the thing in the oven, like, and enjoy. Like, there's not much else to do, I don't think. Like it.
Well, and looking at this graphic we have up right now, Mike, out of these guys, who's one outside of maybe Jones? So maybe pick from the other 7. Who's somebody that you feel like will play a key role in terms of maybe starting some games, filling in some, maybe being more of a fourth quarter guy? Who's somebody that we're looking at here that could possibly fill that role?
Yeah, so I look at Jace Febres as a really critical part of this team. He brings the outside shooting. He's one of the better shooters in the country that doesn't get talked about. And so he may insert into the starting lineup and Ramey may come off the bench, or an Andrew Jones may come off the bench as like a scoring punch, or to be the second, run the second unit for a few minutes. So we haven't projected to come off the bench, but this guy has started a ton of games, coming off an injury, but he's still got a sweet shooting stroke. And I think he's going to be critical because one of the knocks on Texas has been the outside shooting department, which with Andrew Jones coming on back on again, Coleman's improved. Having Febris stretch the floor is going to open up the lane for these plethora of bigs that you have, and this should be the best rebounding unit outside of North Carolina. This should be the best rebounding unit in the country.
Which is something that this team has struggled with, especially the giving up too many offensive rebounds. So to hear that and to know that, okay, like the roster is there, the type of athletes are there to really nip that in the bud, Kerry, that's going to be an important factor in this season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting looking at this projected bench and thinking about this lineup. I kind of go back to last season where there were a lot of these guys got some really valuable minutes that we weren't expecting to, and coming up in big moments. I think, Cunningham, Williams, like these guys played significant roles last season when called upon. Having that experience, especially, we'll kind of see how things play out with road environments and whether fans will be in arenas or whatever's going to happen. Having those guys with that kind of experience in a clutch situation, in a close game on the road, in a tournament situation, whether it's the Big 12 or, this team makes it into March, is going to be so valuable. And I think,
for me, Cunningham, he might be the 13th most talented player on this roster, but when he was inserted into the starting lineup and started giving minutes,
right,
dude plays some defense, and it permeates throughout the team. And when they went on the big run to kind of end the year last year, he was a big spark plug. And to think that this is your 13th man right here,
right,
that's just crazy to me. So we talked about this in football. We're talking about it again. It's all here. I just,
well,
pieces in place and make it work. I mean,
before we get to some season predictions and those kinds of things and kind of what Shaka needs to do, to kind of get similar to Tom Herman. What does Tom Herman need to do to keep his job beyond the season? Let's talk a little bit about how Shaka built this team and kind of the recruiting aspect and what it's looking like going forward. Mike, what do you got on the recruiting angle for Shaka's program?
Yeah, so I think Shaka's been able to bring in the talent. We just, we talked about it. Like, you've got top 100 players littered throughout the program, and it's almost an embarrassment of riches. I mean, you didn't have this much talent assembled in the night. You've always had, the one and dones. We've done a really good job with getting the one and done big. You've got like 4 of these guys starting in the NBA, and Mo Bamba being a 5th in there. Jackson Hayes, making plays. You got Miles Turner in the league. Everywhere you look, it's like there are NBA bigs that are one and dones or two and dones, and it seems like the backcourt has kind of been the issue. You haven't had the strong guard play, and you hear this all the time when you're watching the tournament. It's dominant guard play is what really takes you to the next level. It's good to play great defense and to rebound the basketball, but if you're turning the ball over and you can't make shots, at the end of the day, you're just not going to go very far. So that's why you see a lot of parity in college basketball, is because you get some of these, middle tier programs that get, these kids that can knock down open looks. You can scheme ways to defend, that you can play zone and different things like that to kind of alleviate some of the pressure off of your, some of these players that may not be, great defensive players, whereas Texas has super athletes just all over the floor. It's, can you put the ball in the bucket on the other side? And I think Andrew Jones being fully healthy is going to really do that. And you just got so much experience that it's really kind of crazy. But the way Shaka built this program up is he's done a really good job, not only this team in particular in the last couple of years. He has very limited transfers. And right now, it's almost like college basketball is like free agency sometimes, where you had 600 and something, it was like 690 kids in 18, and then transfer 720 last year, and it's up to like over 750 this year. And you've only lost a couple of guys the couple of years before, and you lost no one this year. So I don't know what that says. I don't know what that means. But that in itself, recruiting these guys to stay together and play together, I think is an advantage, and it should be, and it should show on the court in a COVID season where practice time is limited and things of that. It should be an advantage for you.
Well, and that to me speaks volumes as to how well he sold this to those players. How he's like, guys, we're building to this. Look at what this roster is going to look like. We're going to be something special. You're all going to be a part of this, and we're going to need all of you here. And they buy into it. It doesn't. You take away from the fact that Shaka Smart hasn't won with any sort of consistency here at Texas at all. The fact that he's 10 games under 500 in the conference since he started. The players love him. Players love Shaka Smart. They like to be around him. They like to be coached by him. He can, and I don't mean this in a weird, like, used car salesman type of way, but he can sell this to them and they buy it because they buy him as a person.
Right.
And that to me, it's like he has set himself up to have a great run this year. I mean, this is the best roster that this university has had on campus in how long, Mike?
I'll say I don't know, man. I'll say other than the TJ Ford Final Four team, this is probably the second best on paper roster that we've seen. It's just So Kerry, like, if when we're talking about bringing in these recruits and what's coming up and who's on the radar, who are some of these guys that are coming in, it's like, how are we, these players see that and they know, like, the word is out about Shaka Smart as a guy. It's just, imagine what's going to happen now if he puts some wins together and makes a run in the tournament. Exactly.
Yeah, it would be huge, I think. But just to go back to our question earlier about, is it fair to expect big things from this team this season? I think this lays it all out perfectly for us. When we talk about what's on paper probably the most talented roster in 15 years, 16 years or so, like, hell yeah, there's expectations on this team. There should be.
Yeah.
There should be. And I mean, you've got the graphic up here. We've got a couple, 3-4 stars, a 3-star. Like, the excuses are disappearing.
And to me, it's like Tamar Bates. He's a top 50 nationally rated recruit, offered by Kansas in Kansas's backyard, and you went in and got him. He's selling something that kids want to buy, like you said, Jay. And he's recruiting all over the country too. Marion Ellis is another top 75 player. David Joplin. My favorite kid is Kian, and his hard name. His last name is so hard to pronounce, but it's like Itiri. It's a fun name. You pop this guy's film on. This guy's like a human pogo stick. And it's crazy. I think he has the biggest upside of all these kids. But when you look at Shaka's roster now, it's no different than what he has assembled, over time. He's brought in a lot of 4-star guys, and they've all stayed, and you should be able to develop these guys. And the thing with Shaka is you just can't trust it because you haven't seen the development these players hit their ceilings. And I think you see that in football too, with like some of these defensive backs not hitting their ceilings, and that's what's limiting the chance for you to break through and really make something special.
Well, that's a good note to kind of transition into discussing what Shaka needs to do this season, or with this, maybe not just Shaka, but this program needs to do this season to break through, and by extension, that keeps Shaka Smart around. Like, what do you guys see in terms of how this season plays out for Texas?
Mike, I'm curious to see to hear your take on this in terms of what you feel like Shaka and this program needs to accomplish for him to stick around.
Yeah, so I think it's okay to finish in the middle of the pack in the Big 12 this year. I mean, Ken Palm, who's like one of the most trusted analytics sites for college basketball, like we talked about, has Texas 9th in analytics, and you have four Big 12 teams ahead of you. So I'm not going to look at the Big 12 standings because it's going to be a war every night, even with some of these bottom schools still return some talent. To me, it's what does it look like? And when you're in big moments, do you play up to the big moment or do you crumble? do you take care of business when you're supposed to take care of business on some of these teams at the bottom? And then it all comes down to what the tournament looks like. You cannot lose in the first round. I don't even think you can lose with this roster in the second round, and it's still a disappointment. This has to be Sweet 16 or bust for me, I feel like.
Yep.
Because you've seen this will be the ceiling season for him. Kind of like when we talked about with Tom Herman. He built it up. This should be the ceiling that you reach. Whether that's Elite 8 or Sweet 16, that would still be a win in my books. Because at the end of the day, when you get to the tournament, weird stuff happens all the time. So, one game, one guy gets hot and, or you get one of those Cinderella teams that just goes nuts. Those things happen, but you can't come into this you can't come in as a 3 or 4 seed and lose to the 12 or the 13 with this much talent. And you got upside, I think, for a 2 or even the 3. Yeah, the 3 seed should be within reach on something like this. So for him to keep his job, I think he just has to come out and do something in the tournament and show that it just aesthetically has to look like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, second weekend of the tournament for me as well. And you really took the words out of my mouth, man, because I was thinking that even with a roster this talented and just with how we've seen Shaka manage this team, it wouldn't surprise me if they were, like the 6th in terms of the conference record, the 6th best team ended up being something like that. But the ceiling of this team is so high. And so that's what's so enticing about watching this team and about trying to, I really want to predict that this team is going to,
but there's just that uneasy
be a 2 or 3 seed, right? But exactly. Yeah. And
even talking about it just feels uneasy.
Yep. But Kerry, to me, he does have to get to the second weekend of the tournament to me, or it's donezo.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with that in the sense that like this should be a team and a program that's good enough to get to the second weekend of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if this team puts together a great season and they run into one of those tough opponents in the second round, in the first weekend of the tournament, and like something fluky happens and it's like, well, you hate to see that. Like I don't think that would necessarily kill the regular season and everything if they actually put it together for a full season. It looks like this program's on the upswing. I think back to like our football preview, and I think it's something like I picked Texas to go 8-2, this football team to go 8-2 and play for a Big 12 championship. At that time, my perception of what this football team would look like throughout that process is completely different than how it's actually played out. And here's a team that's on the, it's very likely they go 8-2 and play for a Big 12 championship. So I think Mike, you're thinking about how does it look? What does the eye test look like? To me, is a huge part of how this season unfolds and how, what Shaka's future is in Austin. So
yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just how it looks, man. Like the football team, they could finish 8-2, play for the Big 12 title game, and this season still kind of feels miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If it looks like that for Texas basketball, that could be it. So.
Well, I mean, I think we're all kind of in agreement on what we're kind of expecting from this team. To kind of wrap it up here a little bit, what do you think is going to happen? Like, we all kind of talk about the expectations and what we see from the recruiting and all, like, do you guys think that Shaka gets this thing on the right track? In your mind, is it likely that this scenario plays out, that this is kind of the breakthrough season for them?
Yeah, for me, Texas, my prediction is that Texas will end up being the 3 seed or finish third in the Big 12, make a really nice run in the conference tournament, and maybe even surprise a lot of people. But I think they'll end up being a 3 seed in the 3 or 4 seed in the big tournament. I think Shaka will put it together and find a way with all this talent to really cement himself as the coach here, at least for another season until we're talking about it again. But I think this is a 3 or 4 seed in the big tournament this year, and I think that they are in the upper third of this conference at the end of the season.
I think for me, you have upside of finishing probably second, probably be the ceiling. I don't know if you can get to that top spot. A lot of things have to break your way. But the potential is there. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if looking back, you're like, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they finish 7th and are a 9 seed and get beat in the first round. And you just look at this, like, what in the hell just happened? And it's a weird feeling. You feel like you assemble this type of talent. You shouldn't, like, the floor should not be as low as it is. So.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly where I'm at with this. I think the talent alone carries this team to like at least middle of the pack in the league. And I think if we start to see some big performances and some of these guys, grow into their roles, the sky's kind of the limit. I mean, I just, since we haven't quite seen it from Shaka at Texas yet, I am thinking, it's going to be, I think they finish upper half of the Big 12, have a good Big 12 tournament, maybe not win it, but have a good run in it. And I think a 3 or 4 seed in the big show is, I think that's a pretty good season. I think it's a lot to build off of.
You don't want to take a 2021 drop top Camaro and muddy it all up and not put good tires on it. And you know what I mean? It's like, that's what it kind of feels like. Is Shaka could kind of derail this with decisions and things like that when you have everything built correctly. So
yeah, no, I think it's gonna be an exciting season. I'm Mike, you've done a good job, I think, of getting Jay and I hyped up on this team, and I do think this is going to be a fun season to watch. I think
it really should be.
I think they're going to be an entertaining team, and I think I'm feeling pretty optimistic about what they're going to do this season. I think it's setting up pretty nicely for them.
Cautiously optimistic. I will remain cautiously optimistic, but no, I'm on board too, man. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to talk about. It's going to be fun to dissect. It's going to be fun to watch the development of this roster throughout the season. But yeah, man, I'm on board. Let's do it.
Well, guys, we got about 5 minutes here. Any loose ends we want to tie up? Jay, I know you wanted to hit on some NBA free agency stuff before we run out of time.
Yeah. How much? What do we got? About 10 minutes?
About 5. Yep.
All right, real quick, Mike. Anything stand out to you? Real quick, Mike. On the let me ask you this: Rockets had a nice signing, in my opinion. Since the free agency window is opened, is it going to be enough to keep Harden interested? Because, I mean,
I don't know, man. It just seems like one foot out the door, kind of. I don't know. What's weird to me is I saw a funny thing that said that Houston got a first round pick for Robert Covington, but couldn't get a first round pick for DeAndre Hopkins or something like that.
Oh.
Man, we almost went a whole show without talking Texans.
I've been waiting to get the reaction on that. it was very pure and very raw.
Man,
Houston, man, like they sold out and tried to get it done in the last 2-3 years. Man, I just don't know what to say. The whole NBA is just super interesting right now. I don't know what is going on. Like, all these guys want to play with each other now. It's just not the NBA of the old. It's still a great product to watch, but it's just the competitiveness is just kind of fading for me. I don't know. It's just these guys are going to determine where they are and where they go and what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And as I have, you follow the NBA a lot closer than Kerry and I both do or have. And during the pandemic and stuff, I found myself catching up again and really getting back into the league in general. So I'm interested to see on this quick turnaround if the NBA can carry the momentum that they had at the end of their bubble and all that stuff and keep it going. But Kerry, let's real quick. We had, and this is a team that we're going to talk about with regularity on this show moving forward, but some big Austin FC news here recently.
Yeah, it was a big week. The club, which is getting ready to kick off in March if the MLS schedule stays true. Yeah, we've got Austin FC unveiled their first ever jersey this week, and we bring this up here because it set there's Finn. It set a record for single day jersey sales in MLS, like just shattered the record. And Yeah, it's the excitement's there. There's a lot of enthusiasm behind the team starting, and yeah, we'll definitely be discussing them quite a bit as we get closer to the season. They start making some signings and start building it out.
My family got 4 tickets, season tickets. So I'm not that big of a soccer fan like you guys. You guys know way more than that than I do. But yeah, now that the team's here, it feels like that. It's gonna be something I want to get into a little bit more. So.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about it quite a bit here, and but yeah, just thought that was notable that it's some big news that they setting records. So hopefully they perform on the pitch too.
They will.
Special guest.
Yeah. Hey, you want to say hi, Finn? Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
What's going on, man?
Tell us what you think about Texas, the state of Texas program.
Hey, what do you think about Texas basketball? What are they going to do this year? Are they going to win?
They're definitely going to win.
Definitely.
There it is. You heard it here
first, folks.
Yeah,
Yep.
there it is. Mark the tape.
Confident.
Mark the tape.
Right.
Well, guys, we got it in right under the buzzer here. This has been good. We're definitely going to be talking a lot more about Texas basketball as the season starts and this unfolds. And obviously we've got football left, but yeah, this is good. This has been a good one, guys.
Yep. Good show, Mike. Thanks for coming on again, man. We appreciate it. Always good to have you on, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And thanks everybody for watching. And yeah, episode 30. Here's to we're cruising up there to those 10,000 subscribers. So
we're on our way. Let's keep it up, guys.
Thanks, guys. Let's do it again next week.
Keep it up. Yeah, let's do it.
Keep it up.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
Falling on 6th on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing now?